Here is your list of 100 to 1 million years ago, organized by geological periods and epochs. Late Cretaceous is 100.5 million BC, 100.4 million BC, 100.3 million BC, 100.2 million BC, 1 million BC, 100 million BC, 99 million BC, 98 million BC, 97 million BC, 96.5 million BC, 96.4 million BC, 96.3 million BC, 96.2 million BC, 96.1 million BC, 96 million BC, 95 million BC, 94 million BC, 93.9 million BC, 93 million BC, 93.7 million BC, 93.6 million BC, 93.5 million BC, 93.4 million BC, 93.3 million BC, 93.2 million BC, 93.1 million BC, 93 million BC, million BC, 90.6 million BC, 90.5 million BC, 90.4 million BC, 90.3 million BC, 90.2 million BC, 90.1 million BC, 90 million BC, 89 million BC, 88 million BC, 87 million BC, 86.3 million BC, 86.2 million BC, 86.1 million BC, 86 million BC, 85 million BC, 84 million BC, 83.6 million BC, 83.5 million BC, 83.4 million BC, 83.3 million BC, 83.2 million BC, 83.1 million BC, 83 BC, 80 million BC, 80 million BC, 80 million BC, 79 million BC, 78 million BC, 76 million BC, 75 million BC, 74 million BC, 73 million BC, 72.1 million BC, 72 million BC, 71 million BC, 70 million BC, 69 million BC, 68 mil, Lion BC, 67 million BC, 66 million BC, Hash, Paleocene, 65 million BC, 64 million BC, 63 million BC, 62 million BC, 60 million BC, 60 million BC, 59 million BC, 58 million BC, 57 million BC, Early Eocene, 56 million BC, 5 million BC, 54 million BC, 53 million BC, 52 million BC, 51 million BC. Middle Eocene, 49 million BC, 47 million BC, 46 million BC, 45 million BC, 44 million BC, 43 million BC, Hash, Late Eocene, 42 million BC, 41 million BC, 40 million BC, 39 million BC, 30 million BC, 30 million BC, 37 million BC, 36 million BC, 35 million BC. Oligocene, 34 million BC, 33.9 million BC, 33.8 million BC, 33.7 million BC, 33.6 million BC, 33.5 million BC, 33.4 million BC, 33.3 million BC, 33.2 million BC, 33.1 million BC, 33 million BC, 32 million BC, 31 million BC, 30 million NBC, 29 million BC, 28.1 million BC, 28 million BC, 27 million BC, 26 million BC, 25 million BC, 24 million BC. Early Miocene, 23.3 million BC, 23.2 million BC, 23 million BC, 23 million BC, 22 million BC, 21 million BC, 20.44 million BC, 20.4 million BC, 20.3 million BC, 20.2 million BC, 20.1 million BC, 20 million BC, 19 million BC, 18 million BC, 17 million BC, 16 million BC. Middle Miocene, 15.97 million BC, 15.9 million BC, 15.8 million BC, 15.7 million BC, 15.6 million, 15.5 million BC, 15.4 million BC, 15.3 million, 15.2 million BC, 15.1 million BC, 15 million BC, 14 million BC, 13.82 million BC, 13.8 million BC, 13.7 million BC, 13.6 million BC, 13.5 million BC, 13.4 million BC, 13.3 million BC, 13.2 million BC, 3.1 million BC, 13 million BC, 12 million BC, 11.63 million BC, 11.6 million BC, 11.5 million BC, 11.4 million BC, 11.3 million BC, 11.2 million BC, 11 million BC, 11 million BC, Hash. Late Miocene, 10 million BC, 9 million BC, 8 million BC, 7.25 million BC, 7.2 million BC, 7.1 million BC, 7 million BC, 6 million BC. Early Pliocene, 5.33 million BC, 5.3 million BC, 5.2 million BC, 5.1 million BC, 5 million BC, 4 million BC, 3.6 million BC, 3.5 million BC, 3.4 million BC, 3.3 million BC, 3.2 million BC, 3.1 million BC, 3 million BC, 2.5 million BC, 2.4 million BC, 2.2 million BC, 2.1 million BC, 2 million BC, 1.8 million BC, 1.7 million BC, 1.6 million BC, 1.5 million BC, 1.3 million BC, 1.3 million BC, 1.1 million BC, 1 million BC. This timeline spans approximately 100.5 million years ago to 1 million years ago, covering the Late Cretaceous, Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, and Early Pliocene epochs.